Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Merkel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional, and this week we are joined by cinematographer Darin Moran, whose work includes Moonknight, Godzilla vs. King Kong, and the upcoming film The Estate, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Darin.
Thank you.
Now, we were talking just before we did this, and so I just wanted to jump back. You were talking about the lenses that you had in the background that you had to move, but I do want to know, like, back in the day, like I had friends who were cinematographers, and when we were shooting on film, like I think about a friend who went up to the North Pole to shoot something, and he always had a Bolex with him just in case, or he always had that sort of like backup camera. Do you have your own camera that obviously you're not going to be running around with an Arri Alexa, but
No.
but do you have that backup that you like to keep in your back pocket for shots of your own or anything like that?
I don't have like a motion picture. I stopped sort of my interest in buying one has waned because the technology changes so fast, because those cameras that I'm using, often the post-production department doesn't want to introduce a smaller camera with less of a less robust codec and so on. So I do have a Leica SL2, which I do shoot like previs stuff on and video for reference, and then we'll go back and when we were filming whatever we're filming, we'll use the production cameras. I do like to carry lenses that I like to use that aren't necessarily they're not necessarily the lens I'm using on the show, but I own a set of the small Leica M's that I like to have as a backup because they're so small and they cover full frame, and they're very beautiful because they're based on sort of the M series rangefinder lenses, the last 80 years of people using those, and they have a unique look to them. So I do like them a lot.
Do you ever experiment with, because like the idea of just getting lenses, now you can sort of jump on any camera with an adapter or something. Do you like, like I've talked to some people, and just as they'll be like, oh yeah, on eBay that all these old Russian lenses are going for like $10
so cool.
Playing with those.
Yeah, I love it. I love coming across, like I've played with the Russian lenses, sort of the knockoffs, and the anamorphic knockoffs that they made. And there's always some idiosyncrasies there that might work for somebody, a film that you're doing. It's also super cool. You can get stuff really cheaply and adapt them to whatever and I also want to say to go back to the camera thing, especially as a young filmmaker, I think having something in your kit to shoot like on a moment's notice is going to help you get work. It's going to help you build a client base, because if you're ready to go and you have kind of a package ready to go, that's going to make you more of a sell to a producer or director. Definitely.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. It's interesting because I was looking at your photos online when I found out we were going to be talking, and I'm interested because you've worked in film, like actual film, and you've worked in the Alexa, the digital age, I guess we'd call it. And I was looking at them and I was thinking like there's one photo of the red chair sitting in the tracks, and it's like the green from around it is sort of sitting there, and there's an interesting look to the colors in that. And I was thinking to myself that like back in the day we would have been like putting filters on to get certain colors out on the lenses and trying tricks in the dark room, whereas nowadays it's so digital but I'm wondering, do you prefer to work, you know, that old style of like, let's get it in the camera and just tweak it in post, or do you like to, shoot it flat and do all the manipulation in post?
Are you referring to like stills
It was
or
your stills I was looking at,
stills?
but like I think in the sense of if we could extrapolate to both
Yeah. So
film and stills.
to go from like starting with stills, like I do that as an exercise and just keeping my eye and my sort of mind in a creative space. I love shooting stills. I love walking around and even forcing myself to walk around and shoot, because it's a great discipline to get
Yeah.
into and a good muscle to exercise. With those stills, if I'm shooting color, I will shoot kind of raw files and then do post color correction. But I have like a secret sauce of post color correction. It's very simple. I try not to go. I'm obsessed with sort of some uniformity in the images that I make, especially with stills. That I have like a little cocktail that I use. That it's like color mixing and light contrast adjustments. But I try to keep it all in the same vein, so my stuff has a similar feel. If that makes sense. And go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I said it does.
Yeah, totally. And I like a good friend and a mentor said to me a long time ago about still photography is that it's not about one image.
Yeah.
The photographer being an artist, it's about the whole body of work. So it's like, I don't consider myself like an artist in the sense that I'm showing my work and live in sort of living that life of being a photographer as an artist. But I do believe in the as you generate images over your lifetime, that those things have power as a whole. No matter who you are, you could be not in the film business, not a photographer professionally or whatever. But that's a great thing to have, like as a linear chronology of image making.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of cine stuff, like I geek out on LUTs.
Yeah.
So I'm usually, if I have the prep time, I'm usually experimenting with stuff.
Yeah. So you're just like, oh, look at that LUT.
Yeah, I like to try to match it to the script.
Yeah.
Match it to the style that the director wants to, what style the director wants to go for. And we have all these conversations.
How do you match it to the script? Like, when you're looking at the script, are you thinking like, oh, this is a Western, we're going to go with this look? Or are you looking like, oh, here's the emotional tones, I wonder if these colors would work, or this look?
It depends on the writing. Like, on the last movie, it was that the director's on the estate, the director's intention, he wanted it to be kind of beat up. He didn't want it to be beautiful New Orleans. He wanted it to feel, we kind of try to stay on the sort of the downbeat side of the city to kind of give it that beat up sort of look. And so when I was LUT shopping with my favorite colorist, this guy Alastair Arnold from Photochem, we were talking about like film emulation LUTs from like the 80s, 90s, kind of something that was that had a little bit of grit to it, a little bit of inherent grain structure and color balance that was reminiscent of something like a Fuji stock.
Yeah.
We used Kodak, Portra stock emulation LUTs in the past, and it's a great place for me to start because I like to limit myself. So if I say, okay, hey, let's pick a LUT or two LUTs and we'll kind of shoot the film on with the intention that this is kind of the baseline style of the film. Then when we get into post and we see what the director and the editor have done with the cut, then we can kind of adapt the color science to match, throughout, make it feel cohesive. But I like to start out with a plan, and so, obviously the plans get altered as things go downstream.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having a plan and limiting yourself before you go into production is essential, because there are too many options. Otherwise,
I do have to ask you one question before we get into the estate. And that is, I am a huge Godzilla and King Kong fan. And Part of me wants to know, do they have egos on set? um, what was it
Oh,
like shooting for Godzilla and King Kong?
I mean, I was fortunate. I kind of took over the very last like tenth of that film
Yeah,
from my friend Ben Saracen, who's created the look and is the you know the man who designed that film with Adam Wingard. So I was really fortunate to walk into something that was very well planned. Um, no, like especially Adam Wingard is a lovely human being.
oh, I was talking about Godzilla and King Kong. Do they have egos because they're so
Oh,
famous?
yes, they do have huge egos. The Godzilla versus Godzilla and Kong.
Yeah,
You know, their egos are I'm 50 feet tall and
yeah,
you have to create a frame that
yeah,
fits me in it.
yeah,
And that is make it about this, you know.
yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Yeah, I had a friend who's editing the Godzilla show, and I was just like, "Oh, you're so lucky." And he's just like, "All right."
Yeah, I
uh,
mean,
yeah, he's like, "Yeah, I get the dailies. I wait for the VFX." um, so tell me about the estate. You guys shot in um or you wanted that look of the 80s New Orleans, um, or
yeah,
not 80s New Orleans, but the 80s footage.
yeah, it was meant to be like a film that like that was pre DI, kind of like out of the box, a film that looked just was unified by a film stock, you know.
Yeah,
It wasn't meant to be. Dean, the director, Dean Craig, very much wanted the film not to feel overly manicured or presentational because
yeah,
of the raunchiness of the comedy, and also because just that he wanted it to feel different. He didn't want it to feel like a studio comedy film. He wanted it to feel like its own, it had its own context, its own place. And I think we achieved that. I think the looseness of it, the camera work, kind of the unpretentious style of the color and camera work really allowed the film to be what it was supposed to be, which as it's written is kind of a downbeat, raunchy comedy.
hmm. Well, it's interesting because like the look inside her house, inside Kathy Bates' house, um, because you're sort of like you said, it's sort of that. I don't even know how to explain because I think about like the faded colors in LA. It has like a look when I go to LA, the sun's just beat up the LA. And when I think about New Orleans, I haven't been there, but I always in my head I picture that like the humidity has like sort of drained or created a feeling in the air. Was that like something you guys took into account? Because like looking at the house and the way it was inside felt like that.
Yeah, that house, we weren't allowed to, it's a house is a historical landmark. We were not allowed to do a lot of painting, like what existed. We could put art up on the walls, but basically we could paint a couple different rooms. We painted a few different rooms that didn't
Yeah.
have wallpaper. But it was a challenge. And yeah, the LUT is desaturated to kind of to give that she's Kathleen Turner is meant to be rich, but
Yeah.
also rich in a way that's not, absurdly
Yeah.
and grossly wealthy. So it's kind of like this single woman dying has all this stuff, but it's not like well maintained. It's not flashy. It's not new. It's not, it's sort of old New Orleans money, just like sitting there kind of rotting, but everyone wants it. That's like
Yeah.
the thing, but it couldn't feel like we both wanted it to feel a little bit timeless in the sense that there weren't like, cars weren't featured in it. That was very
Yeah.
much a conscious decision
Oh, interesting.
not to have like, yeah.
It's
And
it's
to have
interesting.
things like even David Duchovny's Porsche is like a little old. Like nothing
Yeah.
is like brand new, right?
Wow. So yeah, that's interesting. And now, like, is there a particular scene or moment in the film that you felt was really challenging to pull off, but you're really pleased with the outcome?
Anytime you do dinner table scenes, there are two big dinner table scenes in that
Yeah.
film, and And those are always, you always have to have like a really concise plan when you're doing that, especially when you have a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of stuff to service, especially with the comedy, like the where people look, the people that actors are reacting to. Sometimes it works with a wide eye line. Sometimes you want a tighter eye line. So, but those are all shots you have to kind of pre-plan. And if you get a little bit of riffing and you get a different performance than you expected, then you might want to pick that bit of coverage up. So you're adding a shot there, like you want to get a tighter eye line to one person from somebody else's dialogue. So we made sketches, we made overheads for both those table scenes, which I advocate for, especially when the blocking is when you have that many people to deal with in a scene. And we went around the table and kind of serviced all the coverage that we had pre-planned. And on the way, if we saw something that kind of needed to get picked up, we would pick it up on the way. But we were able to do those scenes in a reasonable amount of time because of that plan.
Well, it's interesting because whenever I talk to editors, they're always like, "Oh no, a table scene," because they're always worried about crossing the axis. So was that like a big thing on set? You guys were like, "We got to make sure," because it's constantly pivoting.
We kept the eye lines pretty. I mean, I have to say, in the movie, there's a lot of eye lines that are off because that was just the nature of the way Dean's process worked. He liked to jump around. He wasn't that concerned about it, and actually, it was out of my comfort zone because I'm sort of an eye line manager.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of let go of that. And then watching the film, you don't notice it, honestly. Those are things, those are rules that if you know about them and you know when you can break them and when you can't, you can get away with a lot. And ultimately, I mean, it's just like get really technical about it. Like in a table scene, if you go back to the wide shot and reestablish, if the editor goes back to the wide shot and reestablishes where everybody's sitting, then the eye lines don't really matter. You can set up a whole new line in axis line by just coming out and being in a wide shot. So we're always careful to get, I think on that table setup, we did 4 different wide shots from the 4 corners of the table. So the editor could, if the eye lines were crossed, the editor could go back to a wide shot, then re-enter the scene with a proper eye line.
How long how many days were you shooting this dinner scene? I feel like it would be so you're like just
I think both of those took a full day.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, is there, because when I watch the comedy and you see the outtakes and what have you, there's a lot of testing of different lines. Was it similar in this approach that when you were making this? Was there a lot of delivery of different takes or different ways of saying things, or not ways of saying things, but different punchlines in this?
No, so again, like not. I mean, sometimes that was Dean. Dean's directing is pretty. He's pretty concise about what he wants. So like, and we were working with amazing actors on that film. So the diversity in line deliveries was usually generated by them improvising. And often when we got into a scene where we knew both of those actors would want to have some freedom, we would try to do cross coverage, which is kind of essential if you're going to track those different lines, and people's reaction to those lines is impossible. So the idea is to shoot both pieces of coverage at the same time. So we did that a fair amount.
Because I was going to say Anna Faris, whenever I've seen her like talking or anything, she's very quick and very very funny. So I was wondering if like she would be sort of going off script, I guess, a bit.
Totally. Like that. I think that's a beauty of comedy, is like going off script is part of how they get to the next level. And you just have to be careful just in setting up a scene. Well, I would say Dean kind of knew instinctively, hey, we need to cross shoot this. It wasn't all the time, but like when Anna was going to riff hard, or David was going to riff hard, or Tony was, and he kind of had an instinctual feeling, we would cross cover the scene so they could kind of play and not have to worry about remembering where they were.
Interesting. Is there I guess like is there a is there a way, or how do you like to approach getting on the same page as Dean when you're working on something like this?
Well, we had, I think we had 3 or 4 weeks. It was a pretty small film, just in terms of the schedule and how much time we had. But we had 3 or 4 weeks in pre-production to get ready,
Yeah.
uh, which was location scouting. We did a lot of tonal meetings where we would discuss, he would discuss like what he thought the film should look like, and I would pull images from different places, from other films, still photographers, and I like to put everything up on a wall. Like I usually just use the production office printer and print out a bunch of prints and stick them all over the place and be like, and then kind of group them into like, this is driving, this is people sitting at a table, these are exteriors, and kind of I try to create like a mood board
Yeah.
that he can come in and edit, and it's tactile, it's not digital. So we can like pull thing off the wall and like put something else up and like kind of see it all in the space. So we did a lot of that. We did a lot of visiting locations and talking about, well, is this room right for this scene, or
Yeah.
and I'm always saying like trying to push everybody in a direction that will allow us to light it easily. But just in terms of the overall look of the film, when I read it, I kind of knew instinctively how it should look, and it was my ideas were really close to what Dean was thinking. So we didn't have a huge leap to make.
Okay.
And that's kind of that's my process, is like I really, if a film reads and the images are coming to me really sort of quickly and taking shape really quickly, I kind of know like that's probably a big part of the plan,
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then and not all scripts are written visually, they don't have a lot of descriptive text, a lot of it's dialogue, so then there's some interpolation you have to make. But Dean's script was very, very precise in how he wanted to look.
Now, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Um, you gave me this question before, and I'm
My guy question.
Thank God for editing.
Yeah.
My guilty pleasure, really is, I like Mike Nichols movies. Like if it's just for me, like if I want to watch something, like I love the movie Catch-22. I love The Birdcage. Like I just love variety of Mike Nichols comedy, and I like his movies so much. And I think because when I was a film student, I watched his movies. It's kind of a roadmap for the things that I like. So that would be my guilty pleasure, but it's not that guilty. It seems
anyone in particular?
I love Catch-22.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
What'd you think of the George Clooney remake with the series?
I love George Clooney, but I couldn't watch it.
Yeah. Okay.
It hurt me. It hurt my soul. I was like, this is not okay.
It's not my Yossarian or whatever.
No, Yossarian was wrong. Like Milo Minderbinder was wrong. Like, it just didn't feel right. But I applaud them for taking on that project, because that's a challenge. That's a big. Yeah, the book is nuts.
Yeah, I remember I haven't seen the film yet, because I'm like, I read the book and I'm like, I don't know how you make this a film without it, because it's so not, I don't want to say all over the place in a negative sense, but in the sense of like, it's crazy. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. Yeah. And the film is kind of all over the place, but I've seen it so many times, so I can't say like on the first watch if you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is brilliant. I've seen it so many times, and I've found that each time I watch it, I find something new. Yeah. And I do have a great love for the movie.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com and, of course, on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.